Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth.
Hello, and welcome back to the first episode of Season 7 of the Most Haunted City on Earth podcast. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And today we are joined by Eni. Yay! Yeah, we love bringing Eni back just in general, but especially on our first episode of a new season because Eni was one of our first guests, I believe the literal first guests. Yeah, on the show.
The intro.
Exactly.
A little laugh.
I love it. Yeah, so we are going to be doing a ghost mail, and you guys are getting a extra opinion on your stories today because Eni's going to be here as well. So today, actually, we have a really big announcement, and it's something that we've been working towards for a while now, but we are going to be officially introducing what we are going to be calling ghosts. And that is an acronym. But yes, I will stop yammering for 1 second and we will play the video for you.
For over 2 years, the Most Haunted City on Earth podcast has captivated millions on TikTok, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, redefining what it is to be a paranormal storyteller. From inside our unassuming century-old building, Madison Timmons and Chris Susie have spun spine-chilling tales that have haunted people all around the world. Alongside our talented editor, Debria Robinson, and myself, we've gone deep into the shadows, interviewing cult members, demonologists, and other figures pushing the limits of occult entertainment. Well, now, it's time to take this show on the road. Introducing Ghosts, Ghost Hunting On-Site Travel Studio. This isn't just a next chapter, it's a revolution. With Ghosts, we're taking the podcast on the road, straight to the most haunted places in North America. No more just talking about ghostly encounters. This time, we're investigating them. You'll be there every step of the way with live streams, on-site episodes, and immersive experiences that bring you closer to the paranormal than ever before. This game-changing move is powered by you, our Patreon community, the Parajunkies, who make all this possible. To launch Ghosts in 2025, we need your support to fuel this journey into the supernatural. If you love the podcast, become a Parajunkie today and join the family driving this bold adventure. Want to help even more? We're rolling out one-time digital contribution perks on Patreon. Your chance to be a part of history and score exclusive rewards when Ghosts takes off. The Haunted Road awaits. Will you join us?
Ta-da! That is Ghosts.
Wow.
Wow. The video has been played. We are not here to see that video, but nonetheless, we are really excited to be doing.
Technology eludes us.
Yes, it's all an illusion. But yeah, we are really excited about Ghosts. It's going to be a really great way for us to actually get to these haunted locations. Y'all send us haunted locations all the time and say, please go to this place for whatever reason, and so this is going to allow us to be able to travel to these places. And the best way, if you want to support us, is by joining Patreon and becoming a Parajunkie. It is going to be the way that we can keep up with everything and just continue funding these trips out to whatever location you want us to go to. And if you're not looking to join Patreon for whatever reason that might be, we do have one-time donations as well on Patreon that you can use. But yeah, it's also a great gift if you have a birthday coming up or a late Christmas gift that you forgot to give to somebody. There you go. You can give them a Parajunkie subscription. But yeah, we're really excited though. It's going to be super fun. But after that, though, we do have another big announcement. Chris has mentioned this on a couple episodes, but Chris has a paranormal museum coming this year.
That is correct. Right now, the podcast is being broadcast from the back room of the Savannah Paranormal Museum. We're going to be opening up the Savannah Paranormal Museum shortly here. We've been collecting items from all around the world, actually, and the outpour of support has been wonderful. We've gotten lots of people involved. And if you find yourself in Savannah, we're hoping to have an opening in March of this year, 2025. And for the next 2 months, we're going to be collecting items. So if you have a spooky item that has been bothering you, or if you have a friend who just can't get rid of that one doll that follows them around, send it our way. We're going to have all of our post office box numbers and everything up shortly so that you can interact with us and your haunted items may end up in our museum.
And Eni, do you have any fun projects going on for 2025 so far?
I am waiting to see what happens. There's so many things that are in limbo. Like, is TikTok going to get banned? Who knows?
Yeah.
But I am trying to put more effort into my Patreon, and not related to any of this, but I'm a board member of the Bonaventure Historical Society. So
Amazing.
I'm planning some new tours with them. And I just started volunteering at the Flannery O'Connor Childhood Home. So if you're in town, you should come visit, and I might be there.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
That's a great time.
And it's a wonderful place to go anyway. It's such a fascinating story, and she was such an amazing woman.
And of course, as always, you can book a tour with Eni, and we'll link her website down below if you want to take a ghost tour, a history tour of Savannah. But yes, I will try to keep the rest of our announcements short. One last thing, we have a new true crime podcast that we started a couple months ago. It's JT and I yapping about scary things that happen in real life. And so essentially, we rate different cases of killers, cults, all the good stuff on a scale of from 1 to wicked based off 5 different categories. It's a lot of fun. We've had some very heavy hitters. The 12 tribes might have my name on their hit list. We don't know. And so it's a good time, though, and it's interactive because you get to vote alongside, and we do live stream for the Para Junkies pretty often when we film that as well, so they can give their live rating as well. But
If we get killed, you know why.
yes, we're putting this in here right now. If we get killed, we just mysteriously disappear. Just know there are some evil bread makers in this town.
Don't accept any sandwiches from strange sources.
They offered us bread. They did. They wanted barter bread. Nonetheless, that's a good place to be if you want to get into that. But anywho, let's get into the ghost mail. So her first ghost mail comes from Para Junkie Ashlee. So this is Ashlee Meyerskoff. So hello there, Para Junkie Ashlee, back again here. I'm sending this in this very spooky photo that my stepdad captured years ago that I had nearly forgot about. This was taken Memorial Day weekend of 2008 up in Cherokee, North Carolina. This image has not been edited at all. However, I have zoomed in on the orb/figure that has appeared in the orb that appeared in the photo. The story behind this photo, my family was camping by this river. Makes sense. And my stepdad and I decided to do a little hike nearby to an old mill. My stepdad was taking photos along the way, and we came to the spot in the river. He took several photos. Of the 3 photos that he took of the river directly, this orb was present only in 1 photo. It is much smaller in the original photo, which he no longer has, but I did have this photo where I zoomed in on the original picture, and you can clearly see the image of a figure kneeling by the river, in my opinion. Would love to hear your take/interpretation on this image. Huge fan of the show and listen weekly. Would love to see y'all visit Cherokee, North Carolina, or any surrounding areas to validate the residing spirits up there. Happily. Hopefully Cherokee's doing all right after the horrific flooding excursion that Helene brought. But now this is the photo.
So what's really cool about this is it kind of looks like what would be Aboriginal art of somebody kneeling.
That's interesting.
And Cherokee is woefully haunted, that entire area and region. I used to go up there quite often. I had a friend who performed in the Unto These Hills outdoor theater. And so every year we'd go up to visit. And it's interesting because the lore of the area, you're dealing with moon-eyed children.
Moon-eyed
people.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You're in moon-eyed people territory.
And looking at this orb, I would almost suggest that there is a moon-eyed sensation to it.
Ooh.
There's also, if because my brain works the way it does, there's also a Cthulhu-esque, right? If that's an eye and that's an eye, and
I see it. Yeah,
you know, it's facing this direction
with a little bit of a pointier
right. Actually,
Cthulhu
now
head.
the more I look at it, could be a hag. Do you see a chin?
It changes
and
every
a
time.
sharp nose, cheekbones, eye. It's looking this way.
Or it kind of looks like like someone's wearing the skull of a mountain
Oh,
goat.
right. Then then now you have the face down here with the skull on the top.
It's like one of those ink blot tests.
It
What
really
do you
is.
see? But it is interesting.
What do you see, Eni?
I'm the worst at these things. Like, people send me photos from the tours. They're like, what do you see? I'm like, I see some shadows and some light reflections. Maybe that's a cat. I don't know. I can't even see the pictures where you're supposed to relax your eyes and see a schooner. So
those are a little hard, actually.
Yeah. Like,
spend your whole day cross-eyed.
I just believe people when they're like, I see something. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, that totally could be another idea because it's taken in front of a river. It could be some type of water spirit that's from indigenous lore. North Carolina, in the western part especially, definitely has a lot of lore with those kind of elemental type entities where, you know, they love a water spirit up there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it very well could be kind of the essence of that. But it is an interesting photo nonetheless.
Right, and, you know, oftentimes when people get orbs, they're kind of a nebulous sphere of types, but you do see something inside the orb. You see these kinds of shapes, and it does beg the question of, well, what do you see? What can you see? Because the more I look at it, the more I see this old woman's face. Because I see a mouth, it's kind of downturned, a shadow of the lip, two eyes, long hair. It's a Baba Yaga looking thing.
I can't stop seeing Cthulhu, though.
I did ruin it with Cthulhu. I will admit it.
I see the tentacles.
Because, there's all these tentacles coming off of the
You
cheekbones.
summed Cthulhu.
Yes. Which, I mean, would make sense.
Water elemental, yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, that's a really cool photo, though, Ashlee. And yeah, if anybody ever has a photo they want us to see, you can definitely send it to us on Ghostmail or just your ghost story in general. It is ghostmail at hauntedcitypodcast.com. But thank you, Ashlee, and thank you for being a parrot junkie. So our next story comes from Kamilla, predicting my birth years before it happened in strange screams in the night is what they titled this email. So, hello, Madison, Chris, and JT, or whatever his name is today. JT, what's your name today?
Pickle.
He said Pickle.
Ooh, Pickle.
His name Pickle. And Eni is here today, so I guess Eni could be JT. Who knows? Maybe shapeshifted.
Maybe.
It's possible.
But my name is Kamilla, and I've been listening to y'all for about 4 months now. You have no idea how much I love listening to y'all on my hour drive to work every day and during work. I have binged all of the episodes up to the current ones. Good on you, Kamilla.
Fantastic. And
I love it.
I hope your job isn't suffering from our nonsense.
Yes. Up to the current ones, and have gotten my mom to listen to the pod as well. So thank you. We appreciate that. Okay, I'm done with my rambling. Now to the good part. I have many stories, but today I'm going to go into some stories that happen more to my mom. If y'all enjoy these, please let me know, and I will totally write more, including a Hat Man. We always love add it to the Rolodex of Hat Man stories. We will take it. And I think a look back that I have experienced. Oh. Also a fun.
Always fun, yeah.
Yeah. Anywho, my mom has always been a free spirit and has never shied away when it comes to spiritual things. She used to practice pranic healing and had her own health clinic at one point. Before she got married to my bio dad, more of just a sperm donor, she was married to the love of her life who was also spiritually open. He had his own experiences where he was in a coma, and when he woke up, everyone around him said he was a completely different person in all ways. He even chose to go by his first name instead of his middle name that everyone knew him by. Possible doppelganger? Not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
From all accounts, the change was for the better, and he is even said he believed it was some type of walk-in, and he knew it wasn't the spirit he was before. He unfortunately passed away of lung cancer, but he passed But before he passed, he would talk about kids running around laughing in his room and no one else could see. Of course, my mom, being the person she was, went along with it and assumed that it was their grandkids because my siblings were all in their mid to late teens. One day, it was just him and my mom in the room, and he asked my mom to ask the kids if they could be a little quieter. He was not ready to rest. She leaned forward and said, "Okay, kids, Grandpa is ready to sleep, so we need to be quiet." He looked at her and said something along the lines of, "The oldest one is laughing even harder now. You aren't her grandma." That's horrifying. My mom was very confused by this statement, as she should be, because she thought she wouldn't be having any more kids because he was not able to and she was getting older. She just let it slide off her back until she started remembering the feeling she had when she had her last child, which was a boy. She couldn't ever shake the feeling of there was one more girl coming because she had dreamed about it. My sister also would talk about her little sister she knew was still waiting to come down. It wasn't until 3 years after he had passed when she had a dream where he came to her and said, "Because they took me, they are giving you her." She found out she was pregnant with me not long after. That's insane. Mm-hmm. After that dream, she said that I was her miracle and angel on earth. So she named me Angelica, my first name that I don't go by. Thank you, Rugrats. I don't blame you for that. Yeah, but that brings us to me. When I was younger, I was always talking to people that weren't there and able to perfectly describe what they looked like and what they were doing. I would also put my hands over people that might have had a scratch or some type of injury and say God words to heal them. And they would come back to my mom and say it actually worked. I've had a lot of experiences growing up and never really paid much attention to them until I started listening to your podcast, and I believe it has ramped up since that happens.
Yes, that does happen. That's something we could probably do a deep dive on at some point.
Yeah. But I have been writing this for a few days now, and I actually had a really strange experience that happened last night. I was at my boyfriend's house when we started talking about spirit, spirituality, and religion as a whole, and where we differ and agree. He grew up conventionally Christian, but he also is a truth seeker and open-minded to most things. Me, on the other hand, did not grow up in a conventional Christian household, but was taught basic Christianity beliefs, and I do believe in God, but also believe in things that might not think is very Christian, like past lives. We continued this conversation all the way back to my house, where we kept talking while I was getting ready for bed until right before he left. When he leaves, we usually stand at the door talking before he actually goes to the car. And even when he walks to his car, I don't close the door until he is in the car, just for my own peace of mind. We were doing a regular thing when we started hearing something moving through the leaves off somewhere in the yard. I live in the woods on 6 acres, so animals being around wasn't uncommon. We just brushed it off and continued talking. It happened a few more times, and we both kind of got paranoid, but just laughed it off as us being dramatic and letting the conversation get to us. I realized I had left something in my car that I needed, so I decided to walk out with him to get it. I had my flashlight on and looked off into the distance for any eyes or animals just to make sure. We didn't see anything, so I gave him one last hug and kiss from my car, and maybe 150 feet from my house's porch. When he puts his hand on his door handle, he hears what sounds like 2 screams back to back. I say, "Oh, hell no." Oh, oh hell no. Not today, and jump in my car. I immediately locked the door and looked out the window to make sure he wasn't still out there. He had gotten in his car, so I called him. He answers, and we both ask if the other had heard that as well, because we both thought the other didn't hear it. I immediately started kind of panicking because I still had to go back into my house. He moved the car to illuminate my front porch so I would have a clear shot, and I took it and ran. Not my brightest idea. I got in and locked the door behind me, but was shaking, and we stayed on the phone for the rest of his drive home. It could have been an animal or some sort, but I have never heard any animal scream like that. I had also considered it being one of our neighbors, but it also didn't feel quite human. I wouldn't have paid it much attention, but it shook both of us up. And I remember an experience I had a few months prior that was very similar. It happened when my Great Pyrenees pup woke me up at 4 a.m. wanting to go to the bathroom. I was waiting for her to do her thing when I heard almost the same scream. I didn't run that time, but hightailed it up the hill to my back porch and just hope she didn't have an accident before the sun came up. We had wild cats around, so I just told myself that had to be it, but it always stuck in the back of my head. It sounded like it was coming from everywhere. I know y'all say the more details about better, so I tried to give as much as I could. Thank y'all for being an outlet for stories that most of us don't feel comfortable telling. I look forward to the future of the show and hope to become a parajunkie soon. Thank you again, and stay spooky, y'all. Kamilla. That's insane.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the story with your mom, I feel like that has happened to people in the past, especially you usually hear a lot with people who have trouble having conceiving.
The miracle baby.
Exactly. And then suddenly they have a dream, their loved one comes to them and says, you're going to conceive. And then next thing you know, they're pregnant. But it is really interesting that happened much later in your mom's life. But it sounds like you definitely were meant to be in her life.
And whatever means got you here left some residue.
Exactly, yeah, because you got the
gift,
the gifts. Very
interesting, depending on how you want to look at it.
I would love to know if you are still able to do the healing that you were able to do as a child, because that is a very fascinating gift, and not a lot of people truly have it. And so
it's also something that tends to dampen over time. Like for some reason, very young healers oftentimes do not grow into adult healers. They just have that gift. And maybe being so close to the source of life, being very young, you still have access to that energy. But very interesting.
And in a lot of cultures, there is something special about a child born shortly after a family member's death.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Like whether or not they are imbued with some of the parts of the soul of the person who passed, or maybe, whatever God you believe in, like gives them like a little extra oomph to kind of make up for that loss. You hear a lot of stories in a lot of different cultures about that.
Absolutely. That's a great point to make. Yeah, it is really interesting. And it definitely sounded like you were very timely, because it probably helped your mom a lot in the grieving process, someone to pour their love into.
Right.
But yeah, that's a wonderful story, though. And we love those types of stories, because not all ghost stories have to be horrifying. But you did include a horrifying one as well. What do y'all think about this critter in her yard?
I don't like it.
I don't like it either.
So very recently, I've come across a wide range of videos with the terrifying scream in it, where they say it's bobcats. That bobcats scream like women being murdered. That's and it's interesting because they are the sounds. I think one of the ones that the first ones I saw were like two police officers approaching like a barn, and then this scream happens and they run. Because it's unfathomable, A, how loud it is, and B, how freakish it is, because it is just this incredibly high-pitched, drawn-out yelp. And it does not sound like a cat at all. No, it's not a roar. It's not something that you associate with cats. Although it was recently brought to my attention, too, that the sounds that cats make are a conditioning of domestication. They're trying to emulate our sounds. So they're like, it's like, what are you saying? So it's their version of yada, yada, yada. They're like, a bobcat apparently does create a very alarming and terrifying human-like scream.
Very nice. Yeah, it's
and I'm not even saying that that's what it is. It's just one of those things that you're like, I'll put that in the catalog of possibilities.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a fair rationale. And I don't really know where you live in the U.S.
They mentioned that there was wildcats, that they had wildcats around. So I was like, if you have wildcats around, and if there are bobcats around, apparently, look up a video on bobcats screaming and see if that's the sound you heard.
Foxes, yeah.
Foxes make very weird noises. I have a fox problem because there's a fox in my cul-de-sac who really wants to talk to my dog at 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's cute. It's Fox and the Hound.
So the fox is like in our yard going, ah, ah, ah. And my dog is like, ruff, ruff, ruff. And I'm like, no, stop. You can't be friends. This isn't Fox and the Hound.
But they can. They can be
Let
friends.
the Disney magic happen.
Yeah.
And it's a very beautiful fox. We see it all the time, but it's like, what are you? Because it like whines in the cul-de-sac. It's like, are you lonely? Is that your problem? You're just
Yeah.
lonely.
Yeah, he just wants to make friends. He
just
just wants to have a
friends.
hound friend.
Hound friend.
But Chris is hindering that, obviously.
Well, the story doesn't work if we just let them be friends. There has to be an obstacle, of course.
Well, if not friend, why have such cute tails and make cute noses?
Why be so floofy?
Yes. But
You're the villain in this Disney movie.
yes.
Oh, no, I totally accept that. What, are you kidding me? Have you seen the bad guy from Mulan?
Well, on that note, thank you, Kamilla, for sending in your stories. And yes, if you want to send any of your other stories, then you're more than welcome to. We will happily read them. Now, this next story comes from Parajunkie Melissa, who is on the live stream right now.
Aha!
And so Melissa wrote, you said good morning, but it is quite the afternoon now. So good afternoon. I'm currently watching the live stream while sending this email because I don't want to forget.
And you're watching the live stream while we read it. So
I love it.
It's kismet.
It's a full circle moment. Short story. My friend brought her niece on a nighttime ghost tour in New Orleans and sent me these two photos. They are taken through the window of a restaurant, and I have been fascinated by the picture for years since she sent it to me. They were taken on her digital camera before smartphones ruled the world. In the first picture, it is clear. You can't see the details of the table in the background. The doorway is going to be the focal point for the second picture. But here's the first. Let's call the control of our paranormal experiment. So that is the first photo.
Right.
In the second photo, the focus changes a little, and you can see a reflection in the window. You are able to see my friend's hands holding the camera and her hair closed, but look in the doorway. Well, yeah, that's quite the man standing in the doorway. Is he holding bags, or are those his enormous hands?
I think that's the
tablecloth.
stuff from the
Yeah.
picture.
Yep. You're 100% right. And then there is oh my. It said no. There is a whole dude standing there leaning on the door frame. He is not dressed for our time. He blocks out the view of the table. He actually blocks the light on the floor of the doorway. Coolest thing I've ever seen from a person I know and respect it to not fake it. That is fascinating.
Yeah, I can see that one.
Yeah, he's doing a full Nosferatu. There.
He is. He is.
Hunched in the doorway.
And he kind of looks like he's got like a little bit of a belly too. Or maybe that's just the background.
Well,
but
it's weird because it creates almost an illusion of him kind of like one shoulder higher than the other, maybe in that like severe scoliosis way.
oh no, which could be possible. He's just a cool guy.
Yeah. Just hanging out.
Just hanging out. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it looks like he's wearing like an old time white kind of collar, like the ones that do the little orb around the back of the neck, which was very in for French style. And seeing that it's New Orleans could very well have, trickled over.
It could be one of Anne Rice's vampires.
Ooh, that'd be fun. I mean, they got vampires in New Orleans supposedly, but
Well, and now, so that makes it look like bat wings coming out.
it does. Oh yeah, the hands definitely make it creepier. That is 1,000% for sure.
Yeah.
But it is a really interesting photo, and it doesn't look like anybody who would. unless somebody dressed up in full period attire.
I mean, stranger things have happened in New
Right.
Orleans.
Oh, 1,000%. But if it was taken in such quick succession that you
Yeah.
wouldn't notice it in person, that's very interesting.
That is.
Well, yeah, even the fact that he breaks the light of the floor light, you can see he's interrupting light.
His little
which is
Pete.
always, yes.
Yeah. That is fascinating.
That is a really good picture.
Yeah, I would be super excited if I caught this photo.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, it's New Orleans, so
Nosferatu.
it's Nosferatu of New Orleans. You heard it here first. But yeah, that is a fantastic. The restaurant was closed, by the way.
Oh. Well,
Yeah, Melissa just added that detail into
the restaurant was closed and Nosferatu's coming for a bite.
Literally. Yeah. He said, I want the off menu dessert. But yeah, that's a phenomenal photo. Maybe it was a vampire. Although this isn't a reflection, so it can't be a vampire, technically.
Well,
That's
you know,
fair.
there are a lot of vampire clubs in New Orleans. They've been there for years, and some of those people have passed on.
That's very true. That's very true.
That is true. And so maybe that very well could be. But nonetheless, your friend should show that to everybody because it's great. It's a great photo. And I would send it to the restaurant as well if you're able. I mean, this was obviously a long time ago. But if you want to see if there is any kind of connection to the restaurant.
See if there's a history there.
Yeah.
They might be able to give a little bit more insight as well. But I love it. That's fantastic. So thank you, Melissa. We appreciate it. We love the photos. All right. So our next one comes from Bree. And they said, hello there. My name is Bree, and I absolutely love your show. Thank you very much, Bree. I have many stories I'd love to share, but this is one of the most intense. I had an experience back in 2019, but before I share it, I feel you need some background information. I'm sensitive to otherworldly things. I mostly hear, smell, and feel presences. I don't typically see anything aside from the occasional corner of the eye spooky. I like that description. That's good. I'm very conscious about setting boundaries and creating a safe space within my home. I do this through practices handed down to me by my grandma, who grew up on the Cherokee reservation. There's a thorough line. This always seems to happen to us. And she learned from her grandfather, the community shaman. That's awesome. My husband, on the other hand, is a big burly fireman who is way more sensitive to the paranormal than me. He mostly sees paranormal activity. He will see full-bodied apparitions and creatures just hanging about. He's extremely sensitive. Things latch onto him constantly, and he is a giant scaredy cat when it comes to the paranormal. That seems to be a commonality amongst a lot of people who are able to see spirits, but he will run into a burning building for anyone, but when his grandpa popped in to say hello, he wasn't ready to move and call in a priest. He does not know how to protect himself from entities, nor does he care to learn. So it's up to me to yell at the hitchhikers he brings home, which, I mean, makes sense considering his line of work. But in his line of work, he tends to bring home a lot of uninvited guests. The story takes place over the course of 2 months in the summer 2019. Back in 2019, my husband and I had just gotten engaged, and we were staying at my parents' house while we saved up for an apartment. We were both very stressed out, and the engagement did not go over well with my husband's family, so he was not in the best headspace, which I feel is important to the story. The house we were staying at is my family's home. It's been in the family for over a century. My grandpa bought the house at a flea market, and it was so interesting.
Didn't know you could do that.
I didn't either. And it was so old that it had square nails.
Oh, wow.
That is super old. When my mom inherited, they fixed the original house and added an addition. This land sits right next to a water access way and is basically 5 acres in the middle of a swamp. My grandma's ashes, the Native American one, are spread on the land, and she often visits appearing as a bright white entity, making the grandkids' toys go off that say, I love you, or just checking in. She was the only spirit I knew of that liked to hang around. My husband and I were staying downstairs. The room we had it had glass doors to the left of the bed that led to the main outside porch. You could see the stairs that led into the house, the carport, the forest behind, and the flag that was hung by the staircase. Directly across from the bed was a sliding door that led to the bathroom. So you could be laid in bed, look to the left, and it's the 2 glass doors going outside, and look straight and see to the bathroom. The paranormal activity started out very mundane. You'd see a shadow in the corner of your eye here and there, and maybe hear footsteps, but nothing that screamed malicious. I typically just ignore things that are at this level because they tend to go away if you're not feeding them energy. For me, it wasn't uncommon for visitors, as I call them, to try and get my attention. So nothing seemed out of the ordinary besides a figure that looked far off in the tree line, but his face almost looked like he was wearing a black and white mask, which is creepy. If it's watching you from a tree line, it's creepy. But it felt uneasy. It felt uneasy, but it stayed pretty far back. When I say tree line, I mean this thing was tall and you could see its face through the branches. There was some construction happening pretty close to us across the water access. A lot of trees and wildlife were displaced. I assumed this entity was tied to that until later. The moment everything changed was when my dad had a diabetic emergency at the house. He could not get his blood sugar up for anything. He had eaten so much sugar and nothing was working. It was just me and my husband home with him at the time, so we called an ambulance and they took him to the hospital. My mom worked at the hospital, so she called to ask us to stay at the house and watch the dog so she could stay with my dad. While locking up, we turned off a lamp in the living room, a lamp that is always on and doesn't normally get turned off. As soon as we turned the light off, we were instantly surrounded by darkness and this wave of super negative energy hit us both. We were both scared to the point we ran into our bedroom where we felt mildly safer. Side note, my dad is fine as soon as he got off the property. He was okay and his blood sugar evened out. Very interesting. That was the start of the intense activity. Over the next few days, you could hear people walking around outside our bedroom door at night. My parents had an English bulldog that had sharp nails that you could always hear him walking around if he was out. He's not allowed on the furniture, but I always let him sleep in the bed with me. I swear he was walking around outside of our door, but when I'd open it, the noise would stop and he wasn't there. He slept in my parents' room if I didn't grab him before they went to bed. I'd asked my mom the next morning, but she always said the dog was in her room that night. The noises progressed and eventually it sounded like my dog's claws on the floor and someone walking around dragging chains.
Good Lord.
Absolutely not.
Nope.
While the noises and uneasy feelings progressed, that masked entity and the tree line would slowly get closer to the house. This sounds like a horror story.
It does.
When my husband caught me staring at it one night, as I often did to make sure it didn't move, my husband explained that he has also seen that thing around since he lived in Guam as a kid. Oh. So it might be attached to him. He thought he left it behind when he moved to the States, but it followed him and normally stayed in the woods behind his parents' house. He didn't realize it had followed him to my parents' house, too. He said he'd only seen it up close once since we had been together when we were hanging out in his room at his parents' house when he looked up at a mirror in his room and saw that masked face in the reflection, which of course made me realize we weren't just dealing with some mischievous ghost. I can't believe, just a sidebar, I can't believe your husband was that day old, to tell you about, oh yeah. Oh,
by the way.
BT dubs, it's been with me my whole life. It's fine.
Oh my God, that's terrifying. But the house really started to feel unsafe and I worried about my family's safety. My parents are not believers. They think I'm absolutely crazy when I talk about this stuff, but I brought it up to my mom anyways and gave her an amethyst necklace. Not that the stone itself had a lot of warding energy, but that stone meant a great deal to my grandma. It was her favorite stone. Her house was covered in them. It's always made me feel safer having one close by. My mom took it, but kind of blew me off. One night, I heard my mom scream, so I ran out to the living room to check on her. She had fallen asleep on the couch, and she woke up to a tall, dark figure standing over her. She said, I was scared at first, but she knew it was just her mom. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Since I told her before my grandma stayed on the property, I didn't have the heart to tell her that was definitely not grandma. The whole while was talking to my mom, we both heard something outside and we walked on the porch where it looked like a man was walking between the cars at the carport. I went to chase them off, but no one was there when we got to the cars. When I walked back into my bedroom, my husband was sitting up in bed and extremely pale. He said when I ran out, a childlike figure ran across the room and into the bathroom, and the face in the tree line had gotten closer again. Fed up with the bullshit, I know, I stomped into the bathroom and cussed whatever was in that bathroom out.
Good.
That's how you take it.
Yes, that's how you get rid of a ghost. Yep. And I made it very clear that nothing was allowed in this house when I was there. I realized later my wording left room for loopholes. And after that, the noises in the house subsided, but outside was another thing. I had trouble sleeping most nights because me and the masked entity in the trees had staring battles all night. And when I did sleep, I had this reoccurring dream of a man breaking in through the glass doors and murdering my husband before I could do anything, and I was helpless. I had this dream almost every night after I cussed out everything in the ether. It felt awful being at the house, so my husband and I went to the beach to watch the 4th of July fireworks, and just so happened to also be my birthday. I guess while we were gone, my parents thought we had been home all day because they heard people talking and things moving around in our bedroom. When I explained we had been gone all day, my parents said that was weird, but I could tell that my dad was a little nervous, and my mom, who doesn't believe that it had scared me. Sure enough, when we went into our bedrooms, things were moved around and not where we left them. Later that night, I did something stupid. I love your candidness.
Yes.
Why?
And the general awareness.
Yeah. Very aware that it's so stupid.
I realize this is a stupid idea.
But I did it anyways.
But a bottle of Jack Daniels later, and I was ready to fight.
At least you're self-aware.
Exactly. Right. Why I thought it was a good thing to try to astral project, I have no idea. Oh. But I thought I would see if I could. I've lucid dreamed before and thought, heck, it's my birthday. Why not? Why not just launch my... Happy birthday. Let me launch myself into the astral plane.
Allow me to hang my physical form out like a big bait.
So that night, after my husband fell asleep, I started to meditate and get myself into that sort of state. And right before I was about to try, my husband shoots out of bed screaming, "No, it's not safe." And then it instantly goes back to bed or sleep. Needless to say, that scared the mess out of me. When I woke my husband up and asked why he yelled at me, he said he had no idea he had yelled. All he remembered was that he was having his own nightmare. The next day on my way home from work, probably around 10 to 11 p.m., I FaceTime called my best friend to explain the situation. Before this mass thing, I had never encountered an entity I couldn't handle. When I got back to my parents' house, still on FaceTime, my friend and I both heard the most intense growling that sounded like it was coming from directly behind me as I walked up to the house. Absolutely not. Definitely not a bobcat this time, I don't think. It did not sound like any animal I had ever heard before. I ran inside and I sat on the bed where my husband was already laying. I looked to my friend on FaceTime and they confirmed that they had heard the noise, but the video had actually frozen. But they swore they saw something in the tree above me. My friend and I continued to... This is horrifying.
It is.
You should write this in a script and try to sell it because it's a good story. When I finally laid down to sleep, I looked in the tree line to find my friend, but it wasn't there. Something else finally finally caught my attention. The flagpole that was mounted by the porch stairs started to bend unnaturally. Oh. The pole that had held the flags started bending towards the ground. The flagpole was mounted over 12 feet in the air, so it's not like something was below pulling on the flag. I woke up my husband and told him to look at the flagpole and never taking my eyes off of it. What I saw was the flagpole bending down almost to the point where it could snap. But what my husband saw was the masked entity pulling on the flag and grinning. It was at this point I was completely over this situation. I did not like that this thing was so close and that it's now hiding itself from me. I got pissed and I Googled every prayer known to man for protection. I'll be honest with you, I was not a religious person until this experience, but I was desperate and I knew if I didn't do something now, that thing was going to pounce. So I recited Archangel Michael's prayer over and over until the giant white light flashes outside in the trees and everything all of a sudden felt so safe and comfortable. And I could hear the frogs and crickets again. I didn't even realize it had gone so silent around the house. It's normally so loud, I don't know how I didn't realize how quiet it had become until the noise came back. I don't know what the white light was, but it saved us. Probably St. Michael, if I had to guess, but we haven't had a problem since, never seen it again, anything else at the house for that matter. My grandma's spirit also left. As for that's
really interesting.
That is interesting. As for my husband, he is happy and thriving. He struggled with depression and suicidal thoughts since he was a child, and we couldn't help but wonder if it was all tied to the entity that followed him for so many years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We are currently happy, thriving, and on good terms with all of our family members, but that summer of hell in 2019 was intense. I'd love to know what you think about the situation. I have so many stories I'd love to share with you, but this one was the most difficult. I really love your podcast and enjoy listening to all your theories. I feel like I have learned so much listening and hearing other experiences that have helped me explain a lot of my own. Thanks, Brianna. Well, that was a whirlwind of an experience in itself.
Yes.
So I'm trying to process all of that. The white light is interesting. Sorry,
We've talked about using white lights, conjuring white lights, or creating white lights for protection. If you simply think about white light, you can actually repel darkness around you. And I always call it the white box. Like, imagine a white box. Put yourself in it. Put your friends in it. It will protect you, because it is in almost every culture. There is a version of the white light. There's in almost every culture. The white light is a part of the boundaries that we can set with spiritual beings.
Absolutely. I mean, my theory, so because you were saying the Archangel Michael's prayers, my thought...
A warrior angel, by the way, yeah.
Literally the one that they call to exorcise demons a lot of times when Catholics are
Entrusted
involved.
with the sword, as
Exactly.
it
And so at first I'm like, oh yeah, that's, St. Michael coming down and being like, yeet. But the other thing that I think is interesting to note as a possibility is you said that your grandmother, every time she appeared, she always appeared as a bright white
light.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so I wonder if it was just a coincidence that you had been saying these prayers, but your grandmother was the one that defended you.
Well, it's the intent. It doesn't... When you're calling out for help and there's an entity that is amenable to helping you, the name isn't important. Your mother will come, your grandmother will come and help. And it's very possible that she used every last bit of her energy. The big bright light could have been her expelling all the energy she had to be present. And, she may be building it up to show up again in the future. But I find it interesting because different cultures have these different ideologies about how the dead should behave. For most of the Western culture, the dead should be quiet and stay away.
Exactly.
We put you in a hole in the ground. That's where you should be. But in a lot of cultures, the dead have jobs. Ancestors have jobs. You call upon your ancestors for guidance, for help, for all these things. It makes a lot of sense that, in an indigenous family, that the ancestors are still on call to help, to facilitate. And it's very interesting. And it's interesting, too, because, and I was trying to look it up, but I'm not overly familiar with Guam spirituality or spirits, but I could have sworn that there was a spirit in Guam lore that was basically the people before people. And I want to say indigenous people have this too, First Nations, the notion that there is like a level of evolution that the humans, we're so far removed from it, but there were these people who existed prior to humans, and they would be recognized by Westerners as demons, but really all they are differently energied entities. I'd be really interested if you could draw the mask.
That would be fantastic.
Because mask work and mask art is fascinating. And every culture that utilizes masks have very specific connotations to them, colorings. Black and white mask seems like a life and death mask. It seems like a plane walker, something that can move from the realm of the dead to the realm of the living. So if you could, if it's within your purview to draw it, or at least kind of map out what it looked like, I think we would love to see that, because there are a lot of masks. I just recently got a mask from the Dan people of the Ivory Coast, and the mask was made so that the wearer could walk in the lands of the dead, so they could see not just ghosts, but they can see what ghosts see. So this mask is supposed to... So every culture has these ideas that if you don a certain specific mask, it gives you certain abilities, and it'd be interesting to see what that mask looked like.
Yeah, that's fascinating, actually. Or even if your husband wants to draw it because your husband was traumatized by this thing for
and
most
probably
of his
more
life.
familiar with it. Yeah,
And since he has a tendency to attract hitchhikers, as she put it,
absolutely.
that wouldn't surprise me that it was just something like no connection to it whatsoever. It's just something he came across as a kid, and the spirit was like, "Oh, you can see me? Heck yeah, I'm following you."
Right.
1,000%. But it is a very harrowing story nonetheless. And I'm on the side of that was your grandmother. And especially because she was attached to the land because they scattered her ashes on the land.
Absolutely.
So
protector of you, of the land, and there's an encroaching darkness that is threatening her grandchild. Absolutely.
but yeah, if you want to send more stories, please do, because that was phenomenal. We really enjoyed that. But last little bit, we have an update. So this was the restaurant where Melissa's friend captured that photo. And apparently they have a story about their ghost.
Oh, interesting.
So they said, our ghost. And this is at Muriels, Jackson Square, which also very much so looks like what's the house where that lady was torturing people up in the attic?
Oh,
y'all know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Something.
Was it Nicolas Cage bought it? Is
He
that the
bought
one?
it. It's for sale now.
Oh.
Oh, but no, somebody bought it. It was one of those.
LaLaurie.
LaLaurie.
Thank you. But yes, it's a LaLaurie house. It looks very eerily similar to that. That was just a side note. Regardless, though, for many decades, the city of New Orleans has embraced a reputation of refuge for the lost souls wandering the streets of the French Quarter. Here we celebrate death and life with a second line and befriend the many spirits who have not crossed over yet. That's very interesting that they perform a second line for their ghosts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, living amongst us, it's said that when some people die, they never cross over because they have unfinished business to tend to, or even a burning love so deep they could never leave it behind. Sometimes that love is a home right here in the heart of New Orleans. So in 1718, New Orleans was founded by, I think is what they meant, by a young French Canadian named Claude Trapinier. Was awarded this piece of land for his assistance in the expedition. Trapinier built a small cottage, which later became a prime piece of property, due to the fact of its proximity of the area that soon became known as Jackson Square during the layout of the quarter in 1721. Around 1745, Jean-Baptiste d'Estremmes, a man of great power and wealth, considered to be a royal treasurer of French Louisiana colonies, acquired. Oh, that's interesting. There's a photo in here that looks very similar to it. But he immediately tore down the humble little cottage and built an elaborate home of grandeur for his family. After his death in 1765, the house was passed down to his son and then sold at an auction where the family money ran out. In 1776, Pierre Philippe de Marnier purchased excuse me for butchering these French names, but purchased the grand residence and used it as one of his city homes when he came into town from his plantation on the outskirts of town, known as the Faubourg Marnier area today. On March 21st, 1788, the Great New Orleans Fire started on Good Friday and burned 856 of the 1,100 structures in the French Quarter, including the city's main church, original Cabildo, the municipal building, the army barracks, armory, and jail. During the tragedy, a portion of Pierre Philippe de Marnier's mansion was burnt. During the next decade, the city of New Orleans was in a rebuilding process, trying to recover from the fire that swept the French Quarter. The Spanish replaced what was left of the wooden buildings with thick brick walls, structures that included courtyards, arcades, and wrought iron balconies. Among the new buildings in Jackson Square were the St. Louis Cathedral, the Cabadillo, the Presbytere, and piece of property Mr. Pierre Antoine Lepardi Jourdan, these names, purchased from Marnier. Pierre-Antoine Lepardi Jourdan built his dream home, restoring it to the original grandeur for his family and himself. Although Jourdan dearly adored his beautiful home, he was a man that could never quench his thirst for the thrill and excitement of gambling. Sounds like a Gatsby type.
Yeah.
In 1814, he wagered his beloved home in a poker game and crushingly lost the one thing he treasured most in life. That's awful. The shock,
But a lesson for us all.
literally, don't put your house up.
Don't put your house up.
The shock of the loss was so intense that before having to vacate the premises and hand over his beloved treasure, he tragically committed suicide on the second
There
floor
it is.
in the same area where Muriels Seance Lounge. You also named it Muriels Seance Lounge? Okay.
New Orleans. Of course they have a seance lounge.
I guess
You
so.
know, let's retire to the seance lounge.
Ooh.
We'll have a cigar and talk to a dead person.
Oh, yes. Great company. But the Seance Lounges are situated today. Pierre-Antoine Lepardi Jourdan is still with us today in spiritual form on the same piece of property that is now Muriels. His ghost doesn't appear in human form, but instead as a glimmer of sparkling light wandering around the lounge. Our seance lounges on the second floor are named as such because it is believed that this is where Jourdan spends the majority of his time. Patrons and employees of Muriels have also witnessed objects being moved around throughout the restaurant. He believed Mr. Pierre-Antoine Lepardi Jourdan never left his true love and home in New Orleans. He continues to reside here to this day. Although Jourdan is considered to be our main resident, he's not the only spirit amongst us. We also have a slightly mischievous ghost in our courtyard bar that roams the property. 3 times since March of 2001, glasses have flown from behind the bar 12 feet across to the brick wall and shattered. Perhaps some servant stayed behind to take care of him and go downstairs to throw glasses to release some angst. Other possibilities include previous patrons and owners of the property during the late 1800s and early 1900s, or that it's Jourdan trying to get across to the other side or desperately trying to communicate with mortals he considers to be his family. And so present day, many paranormal investigators have occurred over the years, with several reports stating that they've seen unexplained strange shadows while hearing unknown voices nearby. The most activity comes from the seance lounge, where very distinct knocks on the brick wall may interact as communication. Audio of a female's voice has also been discovered with no female present. We firmly believe that our resident ghosts here at Muriels are harmless and can sometimes be very entertaining. Those who have seen or felt a presence have never felt threatened, and instead we've welcomed an old kindred spirit to dine. By always keep a table reserved for Mr. Jourdan set with bread and wine. That's
Very
why he
cool.
likes being there.
That.
That's a great story.
We are
though.
long overdue for a trip to New Orleans, so
Yes.
we need to just get a checklist of the places in New Orleans to go to, and jump in the car. It's only like a 10-hour drive.
Well, soon, if we have our RV, we can drive to New Orleans.
I don't think we can wait that long.
Well, that's true. That's fair enough.
Just don't go in July.
That's
no,
true.
That's what I'm saying. We need to go before the heat or after the heat.
After Mardi Gras, before the heat.
Yes, that sounds perfect. But yeah, very interesting. And all the photos that they include on this page definitely feel in the same vein as the photo that Melissa's friend caught. So super. Yeah, JT said he'll link the page down below if you want to read that yourself or see the photos. But very interesting.
There's a photo that just looks like the exact figure. From,
Literally.
Yeah.
Old Jourdan. But all right, y'all. That was a fantastic set of ghost mail. So thank y'all so much for sending those
Keep
in.
them coming in.
Keep them coming in. Yes, if you have a ghost story that you would like to send to us, you can send it to ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com. That's the best way to reach it to us, because if you send it through the DMs or what have you, it's more than likely is going to get lost in the translation. So, but with that, though, thank y'all again for listening to this first episode of our new season. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.